Good morning. I'm Mark Allen from Gaper, and I'm with uh, Carmina Santamaria from Safer Routes. Good morning, Carmina.
Hi, Mark. Good morning.
And actually,
Thank
it's
you.
afternoon where you are, so good afternoon.
Yes, as it is good afternoon for me.
Yes, it's still morning here in San Francisco. So, could you just share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Absolutely. I have around 12 years of experience working with all the way from big corporations like IBM and Bechtel. And I've been in the startup world for around 8 years. I'm already a third time deep tech founder, always in the social impact arenas. And my first company, it's been in education technology, where we built the software to optimize the use of bandwidth in the classrooms.
Hmm.
My second company, it's called Quema, and essentially we designed, manufacture, and launched to market the smallest safety wearable. And this is after a friend of mine was kidnapped at broad daylight in Bolivia. So I figured we needed a way to call for help in a very discreet way, so that we could actually have jewelry to call for help. And now I am into my third company, which is Safer Routes, where we are developing the largest database of safety incidents, where we can actually predict safety in situations and help users make decisions in the shared economy, essentially.
Oh, very interesting. I think I did do a podcast with Quema. I think it's Ali, right?
Yeah, Ali is my co-founder for Quema.
Ah, cool. Yeah, I did do it. Yeah. I think he's in Southern Hemisphere too, right?
Well, he's actually in St. Louis
That's
in
right. Yeah.
Missouri.
But I think he was also he seemed to be a person of the world too. Been to many places.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I guess that's how we connected.
yeah, probably. So, what has been your experience with remote employment, both as a remote employee and as an employer?
Well, I guess when you are a tech entrepreneur, and you don't have all the resources, you're kind of like forced to look for talent all across the globe. And talking about talent, I don't know, in India, South Asia, talking about Latam. So I had to learn very early on how to accommodate from time difference. I mean, if you work with India, you can only work in the very early hours of the day. Whereas sometimes I have a call and it's 3 a.m. for me, but it's the last hour that I can have that meeting. So you kind of like have to adjust, and that's part of what it is. And the other side of things is that you need to have a clear map of what you expect, what the process would look like, and have a clear expectation on deadlines, on how flexible each task will be. So I guess that's something that the entire world is experiencing right now,
Hmm.
as prepared or as not prepared. We're all in it right now.
Yes, we are definitely all in it right now. That's for sure. So, what do you think is the future of remote employment? And what do you think needs to be done differently to make it better and more effective?
Well, there are a couple of things. I think most of all, having a clear expectation.
Hmm.
I think it is the most important one, because people who are not used to working with somebody who's remote, I mean, you are expecting XYZ, and if that is not communicated across with the team on the other side, I mean, you may have disappointments, delays, and probably will spend more money than you should. So that is for me, number one. Number two, it's using tools, for example, Asana, Trello, which I believe like 90% of startups probably do deploy these tools in order to have a clear workflow and understanding of what has been already done, what is in progress. And three, which is where I think that it's still like developing, we need better tools to interact because, I mean, like it or not, we are humans. We need that, you know,
Mm.
relational aspect of things, and work is not different, you know. So I believe we still need better tools at doing that type of interaction. Some teams have figured it out, and
Mhm.
I mean, the rest we're just, you know, trying to do our best.
So, and from that, you mean things like we're talking on Zoom now, or do you mean more personal interaction, like
Well, yeah, we have
call?
Zoom, but you know, when you work in the same environment, I mean, I had offices. We had a team in Mexico City at one point, and is not the same as, you know, I'm just gonna approach to this guy and tell like, I just want to see what you're doing, if I can help you, you know, or maybe have that, you know, Alexa gives you the capability of dropping in, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you're just dropping in, you're just there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that type of ability.
Hmm. Interesting. Yes. Okay. So, um, can you tell me the story behind your startup? I know you're fairly new, and what's the journey been like?
Yeah, so, well, I've been working in personal safety and security for now 4 years,
Mm.
and supporting and empowering women how and in whatever capability I can. I believe that's my passion. So with safer routes, what happened is that myself, I mean, I've lived in Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, and I travel so often. So I find myself all the time, you know, calling an Uber in Brazil, Didi, and I was actually in one of the situations where I took a Didi and I was distracted, you know, like checking that I had all the stuff for my next meeting. And next thing I know, I was actually being kidnapped myself.
Mm.
That was quite scary, but I kept my cool. And I mean, I realized that the driver probably was more nervous. According to the police, he might have been, I mean, it might have been like his first time. That's why he was so nervous. And thank goodness that he actually let me go.
Mm.
And that was an experience where I did go to the police. I did file the what had happened. I tried to contact Didi and everything, but nobody seemed to hear me or read me apparently. And there were like clear signs that something was wrong, especially if you are the director of one of these ride sharing companies. For one, the routes, I mean, the driver went off route for a long time. That
Mm.
was the first sign that something was off. The time of the ride as well. And I mean, there is no proper uh, ID, like background checks for
Mm.
these guys. Last year alone in London, there were over 14,000 cases of rides that were done by unauthorized Uber drivers, so
Mm.
fake drivers. So, I mean, we have so much information available that we can organize it and translate it into safety information. So that's how safer routes is coming about. And essentially what we are going to do, because it's still getting started, is organizing all that information from rides, from safety events that take place with a customer. We're talking about people who are on the street doing sales, collecting data, probably doing some technical installation, all of these people who are out and doing some sort of work.
Mm-hmm.
And we can provide safety maps, which means that, I mean, Google is always giving us the best route, the most optimal route, but it
Mm-hmm.
is not the safest one.
Hmm.
So that's why we want to provide better information on maps, on routes, and also gather all of this information in order to verify who we are riding with,
Hmm.
who are we opening the door to do an installation. Is it really an employee, or is it somebody who is pretending to be a company representative and commit a crime, you
Hmm.
know? So we want to go deep down into these layers in order to predict even safety events.
Wow, that's a massive amount of data you'll be collecting.
It's all data. It is all data, and that's why we're bringing a very strong advisory team on board who can help us navigate.
Interesting, because I worked 17 years in the telematics industry, so I'm very familiar with the data you'll be collecting. So are you working with any telematics providers?
Not yet.
Hmm.
Right now, I mean, what I'm doing is more of getting that validation.
Hmm.
So I'm speaking to companies that have 5,000 plus employees, and from which a good percentage of them work in the field.
Hmm.
So I'm at the stage of like validating the problem, and so far I got like very good answers in terms of like, hey, yeah, we actually need this, especially in countries like Mexico that
Hmm.
is dealing with a safety crisis.
Hmm. Wow, very interesting. So how are you incorporating the idea of remote at your new company?
So I believe like I've always done remote in a way or another way. I mean, I tell you that we did have offices with Quema in Mexico City, in the U.S., and at one point in Chile. And so even if you do have a team in another city, you have to interact remotely, and especially me as the founder and CEO, that I have to be at events and I have to be there. I mean, all the time moving. In one or another way, I have to be doing this remote work. So for me, it's like I said, having that like clear expectation with my team, having one-to-one calls,
Hmm.
so I get on top of things, and if I see that something is being delayed, how can I help, right? I believe like that's the dynamic. I know that it doesn't work for everybody. I had times where I had to let people go because some people are just not ready for that dynamic, and it's okay. Um, so those are the things that you have to deal with.
Yes, no, I've dealt with it myself. I understand. So there are companies like Gaper that we help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. So how important do you think such setups are in the startup world for tech tech founders like yourself? I mean, especially to hire people, quality people, quickly.
Yeah. So like I was mentioning, it is. I'm going to say it is challenging to find the right talent. I believe every company has to go through that. And if you want to start building a remote team, having that remote capability, and you're only getting started, there is a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of not only people but also companies that I mean, they claim that they can help you, and if you don't know them, especially like overseas, it is actually a high risk. So I believe like it's an important role if you guys can uh, provide that credibility, essentially in terms of taking care of like clearing that noise, because there is a lot of noise when it comes to remote work and remote hiring.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Well, do you have any questions for me before we sign off?
Yes. Uh, so I would like to know, like, in your experience, how, I mean, what is the one of the anecdotes that you could tell us that you guys have gone through with Gaper, with one of the startups?
So, and I won't go into any specific ones, but what we do is we find the top developers from different parts of the world. You know, I'm in the Bay Area, and so people automatically think Berkeley and Stanford. And those, you know, those graduates, as soon as they graduate, they're hired locally. It's so hard to find developers. So we're finding the graduates from universities around the world, like Stanford and Berkeley, and we have them ready so that when the demand is there, we have a team ready to go for a startup. That's our niche. So we're finding the best developers around the world. We just did a hackathon where over 900 people participated, and we'll be offering, you know, jobs to the top people from that hackathon.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yes, that is. So, I mean, we understood, I mean, the demand is there. And especially now, I think people over the next month, they're going to learn that, you know, working from home and working remotely is much more feasible than we thought. I think, you know, this is the real first week of it in the United States. But I think as this goes on, people are going to be like, oh, you know, we are connected globally, and this is possible. And the one thing that's great in the Bay Area, especially, there's no traffic. So people are, it's going to hopefully bring a different quality of life to people too.
I bet. I mean, if you can spend just a bit more time at home, and you know how to manage it, it pays off.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've worked from home for 10 years now, and to me, it's almost, it's a way of life now. I'm so used to it. I actually work from home, and then generally I go out to my gym or out to dinner or I'll go out and play sports after work. So I go out of the house at night instead of during the day. So hey, this has been great. Thank you for your time. I wish Safer Routes all the luck in the world. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thank you, Carmina.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me.
All right.